How about that football team, baby? Making the playoffs at a 7-9 record. Third team ever to make the playoffs with a losing record. And what's her reward? Playing Tom Brady. Oh boy. Now, before I get started on this video, I'm going to be talking about this again in 2 days with my friends and quote-unquote co-workers, Ian McKinney and AJ Helmley. We've started a podcast together. It's more Ian's baby than anything, but both Alec and I have been on multiple times. It is called the, where am I pointing? Called the Top Tier Sports Podcast. You guys should go subscribe to that and listen to new episodes as they come out. Ian does a really good job with those. And I'm going to be talking about this topic with those two on Wednesday, but I wanted to get my take out there first. So, here we go. The biggest playoffs in NFL history. 14 teams, 7 on each side. Only the 1 seed gets a first round bye this year. It's going to be super interesting. Triple header on Saturday and Sunday for wild card games next weekend. It's going to be awesome. And I'm just going to break down what I think. So I've got the brackets on my phone. Let's look at that first matchup. First playoff game is going to be Colts at Bills. Now, the Indianapolis Colts, they really perplex me, to use a big word. They've been up and down. They've had good games, they've had bad games. They beat the Packers 1 week, though, which was interesting. And they snuck in at the 7 seed as an 11-5 team. So I'll read off their losses. They lost to Jacksonville week 1. That was Jacksonville's lone win. And then they lost to Cleveland week 5. They lost to Baltimore week 9. They lost to They got killed by Tennessee week 12. And then week 16 they lost to Pittsburgh by 4. So they're not a bad team. I'm not saying that oh wow. And that's why I wear a hat. They are not a bad team at all. I'm not saying that at all. But I don't see them really going deep in this playoffs. First of all, because they play the Buffalo Bills round 1, who have been absolutely lights out this year. But Phillip Rivers, he did pretty well. He exceeded my expectations. And then they have Jonathan Taylor at running back. He had a really nice week 17. I want to see how many yards he had. Jonathan Taylor had 253 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns. So he did pretty good. He's definitely got a bright future. And then I keep checking my phone. I like looking at my stats. But as far as their receiving core, the wealth is pretty spread around. Their leading receiver, I believe, is T.Y. Hilton. He had 762 yards and 5 touchdowns. Not bad. But then they have Zach Pascal, who did okay. Then Nyheim Hines, another running back they have. The Colts like to spread the wealth around. Like, they really don't lean on one guy to get the job done, which is one reason why they've had success. They don't really lean on one guy offensively to get stuff done. And their defense has been halfway solid. Again, I'm not saying they're a bad team, but I don't see them beating the Bills. The Bills are 13-3 this year. They have been absolutely on fire. Their only losses, I saw this crazy stat the other day. They only have 3 losses. They lost to Tennessee on a Tuesday night. Well, they got killed by them, but that was early in the season. Then they lost to the defending champion Kansas City, only by single digits. And then they lost to the Cardinals on that Hail Murray play. So really, they should be 14-2. They killed Miami week 17. They killed New England. They haven't won by less than all of their games since week 9. Other than that week 10 loss, they've won all of those games by double digits. All of them. Like, nobody's come even close. And then Stephon Diggs has absolutely broken out this season. He led the NFL in receptions. And Josh Allen, he's just balling out. He's going to be an MVP candidate. He's not going to win because he's got Mahomes by him and Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers is my favorite for MVP. I'll get into that later. But I really think the Bills win that game because they're in Buffalo. Have the Bills won a playoff game in the last 20 years? I think they made one, but they didn't win one. But the Bills will be in a very good position to win this game. How much are they favored by? They're favored by 7. And it'll be in their home stadium, Orchard Park, New York. And and that's the first playoff game. I've got Buffalo winning that one. I've got them really making a deep run in these playoffs. All right, game 2. This is very interesting to me as well. LA Rams versus the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams made the playoffs with a backup quarterback yesterday who I don't even remember his name. I need to check the stats on that. John Wolford. He did 22 for 38, 231, and then an interception. He ran for another 56. I guess I didn't see that. But the Rams' defense is very good. Nobody's arguing that. They only allowed 7 points against the Arizona Cardinals. The Rams' defense can hold up, but their offense is very, very dinged up. Like, Jared Goff, I'm not sure if he'll even be playing. I don't even think his status is confirmed for that game yet. And then Kyler left with that ankle injury in Week 17, so that certainly helped the Rams get in. But Goff's not going to be in there. I think Cooper Kupp is out for the year. Cooper Kupp always finds a way to get injured, which is unfortunate because he's a very good receiver. But you've got Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald on that Rams defense that have helped them get as far as they have. The Rams finished this year, what was their record? They finished 10-6, which seems fairly accurate. So they got in there. I believe they're the 6th seed in the playoffs. Yeah, the Rams are the 6th seed on the NFC side. So they play Seattle. Seattle, I've lost a little bit of faith in them these last few weeks. They have won 4 in a row, but they've been against the Jets and then Washington, who's meh, and then against the Rams and then San Francisco. So not great teams. And then they lost to the Giants Week 13 when they were on their run. Russell Wilson was the favorite for MVP, at least for me, like the first half of the season. Then he started throwing interceptions, and then the Seahawks lost 3 of 4 in the middle of the season. Not by a lot, but they did. They lost 3 of 4 in the middle of the season. Actually, they lost 4 of 7 from a stretch of week 7 to week 13, but they went undefeated weeks 1 through 5 and then 14 through 17. So they had nice stretches to start and end the year. And Russell Wilson's been there before. He's played in 2 Super Bowls. He arguably should have won both of them. And he's got playoff experience. The Rams really don't have a lot of that yet. And the Seahawks are favored by 4.5 in this one. I've honestly got Seattle winning that one. They've had a good year. They've struggled at times, but I just want to bring up something. DK Metcalf, I've been high on DK Metcalf since he's been drafted. I'm shocked that he didn't get drafted higher. That's one reason the Seahawks have been so successful, is because they know how to draft people. They know how to draft good players. They're consistently good, like DK Metcalf has been. He broke Steve Largent's receiving record for single season yards yesterday. I think he's in like 1,500 something. That number's probably wrong. Don't fact check me on that. But he did break Largent's record, which was a very long-standing record. Largent was a receiver in the 80s. That record's been standing for over 30 years. So DK Metcalf is the real deal. And then you got Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson as a playmaker. That Seahawks offense is dangerous, and that defense can back it up with Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs. Diggs has been very good this year, and then they've got a bunch of other pieces. So I've got Seattle winning that game. Game 3 on Saturday, my Washington football team against the GOATs Buccaneers. This pains me to talk about because I know that Washington doesn't really stand a chance. Tom Brady has won 6 Super Bowls. He's been to like 10 or something stupid like that. He's been in like 20% of the Super Bowls ever played, or some ridiculous number. The Bucs finished 11-5, and what I saw on the stat sheet in their last game really scared me. I'll get to that in a second. In their Week 17 matchup against the Falcons, Tampa Bay won 44-27. Not really a surprise. The Falcons were not good this year. However, what the stat that does scare me is that Mike Evans, first of all, he got 46 yards on Sunday before injuring his knee, and he became like one of the best. Let me rephrase this. I believe he now has 7 consecutive 1,000 yard seasons. He has quietly been one of the most consistent receivers in the entire league, year in and year out, no matter what injuries he's faced. But he didn't even have the best day. Antonio Brown really balled out for the first time since he's been signed by a team. Brown had 11 catches, 138 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then Chris Godwin, another receiver, had 5 catches, 133 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So if Mike Evans is healthy, Brady has 3 healthy receivers around him. And that is going to be very hard to stop because Washington's defense, I am very, very happy with what Washington has done with the defensive line. They have been building it for years. Got Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Chase Young, and Montez Sweat. I believe they're all first-round picks. Maybe there's one second-round pick in there, but they've been building that defensive line for years. Washington has done a pretty good job stopping the overall running attack of teams, especially in the last few weeks. And our secondary has stepped up. Cameron Curl, rookie, who I am personally a big fan of, he has really shown out in about the last month or so, and he got an interception in last night's game against Philly, which was really nice to see. But we still have weak spaces in our secondary, and Tom Brady's been in the playoffs pretty much every year of his career. So he has been there before. He knows what he's doing. And Washington hasn't won a playoff game in 19 years, I think. I don't think they've won a playoff game since the year I was born, maybe even before that. So I want to believe, it's the miracle season for Washington, Alex Smith, Ron Rivera, blah, 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 blah. But it's Tom Brady. And Bruce Arians is a very good head coach. They've butted heads, Tom Brady and Bruce Arians. They've butted heads a lot this year, but I believe their working relationship has improved in the last few weeks, and the Washington won't beat Tom Brady. If Tom Brady somehow gets hurt, I'm not wishing for that, but if he somehow gets hurt, then maybe. But I just don't see it. I've got Tampa Bay moving on in that one. So that's all the Saturday games. Sunday games. The first one is a Ravens-Titans rematch in Tennessee this time. There's going to be some bad blood between these two teams because I believe they met earlier in the year. Titans won that first game 30-24. And Lamar Jackson has lost a lot of hype, which is understandable because he rushed for over 1,000 yards again, which I didn't really realize until a few minutes before I recorded this. So that was very impressive. The Ravens' running game has been lethal this year. Lamar Jackson's getting things done on the ground. J.K. Dobbins has emerged. Dobbins is averaging 6 yards a carry. And then you've got Mark Ingram. The Ravens had like 400 or so rushing yards in their Week 17 game, which is amazing. Their passing game could use work, but their defense and Marlon Humphrey and Patrick Queen, the rookie, he's very good. So the Ravens are a very well-rounded out team. Both of these teams finished at, I believe, yes, they both finished at 11-5. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup to watch. Now the Titans, I love the Titans. They are a very scrappy, old-school team. Mike Vrabel is their coach. They're a very old-school team. Pounded on the ground. Derrick Henry eclipsed 2,000 yards for the 5th most in NFL history. He claimed the rushing title for the 2nd time in a row. And then Ryan Tannehill, he had 3,800 passing yards and like 33 passing touchdowns, which was top 10. Ryan Tannehill has done very well in Mike Vrabel's system. He's been kind of up and down in his career, but the last few years he's really found a home in Tennessee. He fits very well with what the Titans try and do. And Tannehill has some rushing touchdowns under his belt too. He's been very mobile. That Titans offense is very dangerous, and it is hard to stop Derrick Henry. I can't remember the last time he rushed under 150, honestly, because how many yards did he have in this last game? I didn't think he'd break 2,000 yards, but he did. So he had to have had like 260 yards. Do I remember that correctly? Yeah, he had exactly 250 and 2 touchdowns. And then Tannehill ran for 738 and 2 touchdowns. So Tannehill has 40 combined touchdowns, 7 rushing, 33 passing, 106.5 rating. Wow, that's higher than I thought it would be. But the Titans are a very well-rounded team, and their defense is good, but I think their offense and Derrick Henry is where it stands. And then they've got A.J. Brown out at receiver. He is very underrated. I think he's very good. He can be a 4 or 5-time Pro Bowler by the time his career's done. I honestly think that game is going to come down to who makes the most mistakes on offense, and I think that's going to be the Ravens, because Lamar Jackson has thrown an uncomfortable amount of interceptions this year, and he doesn't really have a ton of passing yards in the air. And I really think that the Titans are more well-rounded on offense, and I'm going to pick them in this game. They are the higher seed, I think it'll be a very close game. It'll be a very good game, but I think the Titans will win that one. Game 2, the 8-8 Chicago Bears versus the 12-4 New Orleans Saints. I'm just going to start out with saying Chicago doesn't stand a chance. Like, come on. Chicago shouldn't have even made the playoffs. They started out the year, what, 5-1? Let me fact check that. 1, 2, 3, 4. They won 5 of their first 6 games. They beat Detroit, the Giants, Atlanta, and then they beat Tampa Bay in Week 5, and then they beat Carolina in Week 6. So all those are fairly weak teams, except Tampa Bay. They beat Tampa Bay by 1, and they lost to Indianapolis Week 4 on that stretch. But they won 3 straight from Week 14 to 16. They beat Houston, Minnesota, and Jacksonville. Again, not very strong teams, but they lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row between Week 7 and 13. And then they got absolutely obliterated by the Packers in Week 17. The only reason they made the playoffs is because the Cardinals lost. So the Bears are in almost as bad as a spot as my Washington team. And they can't figure out who their quarterback is. I don't know who their quarterback is. Is it Trubisky or is it Foles? They've been sticking with Trubisky lately, but he played terribly last night. So the Bears really don't have a solidified QB right now. But one thing that has been going for them lately is that Matt Nagy, their head coach, has stopped calling offensive plays, and they've left as the offensive coordinator. And David Montgomery, the Iowa State alum, he's had a bunch of 100-yard rushing games, and he eclipsed 1,000 yards on the year because he got to run the ball. He got to do what he wanted, and it's worked. How many touchdowns does Montgomery have this year? I think he has double-digit touchdowns. I think he had one yesterday, too. Yeah, Montgomery had a touchdown yesterday. He's got 8 rushing touchdowns and then 2 touchdowns in the air. He has 438 receiving yards in the air. So David Montgomery is a very, very good player if you let him ball out. And then you have Allen Robinson on the Bears, who's also another overlooked wide receiver. He had over 100 catches this year. He's been very reliable. And the Bears have a good offense. They just need to have a quarterback that knows how to throw and not turn the ball over 2 times a game. Now, the Bears' defense has been what has gotten them into the playoffs. You've got Khalil Mack leading that defense, and then I forget the name of the one cornerback who's considered a shutdown corner. But the Bears have had very good secondary play this year, which has been a difference maker. So they have had their ups and downs this year, but they finished at 8-8. But then you look over and you see the 12-4 New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees is back healthy enough to be himself. And this will likely be Drew Brees' last year. Think about it. He's in his 40s now, I believe. Either that or he's 39 and he'll be 40 in like a week or something. And he has been denied, to put it in PG terms, the last few years in the playoffs. He's lost to the Vikings twice, and then that pass interference call against the Rams in that NFC Championship game was terrible. Or the no call, rather. Either way, it was terrible. But Brees is set up to, honestly, I can see the Saints making the NFC Championship without too much of a struggle. Because they're 12-4, they are the 2 seed. They added Emmanuel Sanders at receiver this year, which was amazing. Michael Thomas has been hurt, but if he's not back for this first game, he will be back for the second game, I think. But the Saints have what it takes to get it done, and the Bears just don't. And the Saints have more of a fire in their belly than the Bears, because the Bears are shocked that they even made the playoffs. So I'm going to pick the Saints in that one. That really shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. And then the final playoff game in round 1 is going to be Cleveland at Pittsburgh. This might be the best game of the first round. Pittsburgh is favored by 3.5, which honestly I think is generous. Pittsburgh started the year 11-0. And then Washington knocked them off for their first loss. And then they lost 4 of their last 5 in the regular season. And they almost lost that 5th game too. But the Steelers and the Browns just played each other this last Sunday. The Steelers went for a 2-point conversion to tie toward the end of the game, and they didn't get it. And then the Browns iced the game by making it far enough down the field to run down the clock. The Browns have made the playoffs this year for the first time in like 20 or so years. It's been a historic season for them. They finished 11-5, which is very strange to say, because the Browns have been the laughingstock of football for, again, the last 20 years or so. They almost made the playoffs last year, but Baker Mayfield has played overall fairly well. He's had some bad games and he's had some really good ones. There have been a bunch of analysts that have said if Baker Mayfield plays consistently, he will be a Hall of Famer. Like, if he throws high 200 yards a week and keeps the turnovers at a minimum and throws 2-3 touchdowns a game, he'll be a Hall of Famer. But the consistency is still kind of lacking for him. He's got great offense around him. Nick Chubb this year was absolutely dominant. I watched a snippet of that last game, or maybe it was the Week 16 matchup, whichever matchup that he ran for a 40-some yard touchdown. I saw the touchdown by Chubb. He just cut right through the defense. Chubb is very dangerous on the ground, and he should be a Pro Bowler for years to come. And then you have receivers on the outside in Landry and Beckham, and then I think the Browns have a decent tight end as well. They have a good offense. Their defense has some questions. The Browns' defense has been on and off. Their offense will get them there. They got past the Steelers' defense, which is very impressive, because the Steelers have T.J. Watt, who is a front-runner for, well, one of the front-runners for Defensive Player of the Year. He's been amazing. That Steelers' defense is dangerous. But the Browns got past them this last week. But it'll be interesting to see how both teams adjust during this game. I think it's all going to come down to Ben Roethlisberger. He sat Week 17 to rest, I believe. And keep in mind, Big Ben has playoff experience. He's been to multiple Super Bowls. He's won, I believe he's won 2. If I remember correctly, I can never remember if he won 1 or 2, but I think he's won 2. Big Ben has been there before. And so has Mike Tomlin. Tomlin is a phenomenal head coach. He should have won Coach of the Year last year, or the year before, whichever year it was when all the Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell drama was going on, and he still led the Steelers to an 8-8 record, and I still think they made the playoffs. Tomlin should have won Head Coach of the Year for that. But that's a different debate for another day. I digress. I think the Steelers are in better shape to win this one simply because they are more familiar with the playoff setting. Most of these Browns players have never been to the playoffs. Except Odell Beckham went with the Giants that one time, and then he punched a hole in the wall. I've got the Steelers in this one because they'll be able to make adjustments, and everybody's going to be looking down on them. The Steelers are not a good enough team as some have thought this year. Like, I thought going into the Washington game that Washington had a good chance, even though the Steelers were 11-0. They really should have been 8-3 going into that game. The Steelers should really be a 9-7 team. Well, no, that's a bit harsh. 10-6. They should be a 10-6 team with some of the scenarios they've been through this year. But I think the Steelers will be better equipped to win this game because they have playoff experience, and the Browns really just don't. So I've got the Steelers in that one. So that's as far as the first round games will go. So if we follow my picks, we're going to go into the second round. So I had Tennessee winning that first game. So the lowest remaining seed plays the top seed. That's the way it's been the last few years. So the lowest remaining seed will be the Tennessee Titans against the Chiefs. So that'll be a rematch from last year if it goes the way that I want it to go. Kansas City, they finished the year 14-2 only because they rested their starters Week 17. They're a 15-1 team, let's be real. Their only loss was that 1 week that Derek Carr absolutely balled out for the Vegas Raiders. And I watched that second matchup. Patrick Mahomes was stone-faced when he saw there was like a minute 20 left and he had to bring his team down the field to score a touchdown. He did it in like half the time. Patrick Mahomes has ice in his veins, and he won the Super Bowl last year for a reason. He is an elite quarterback, and I honestly feel bad for the guy because expectations for him are out of the water, and not a lot of people are looking at him for MVP. I mean, he put up basically the same numbers as he did last year. He had a few interception problems toward the end of the year, but other than that, he's been the same Patrick Mahomes. He's got weapons around him. He's got a great running back unit. He's got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then Le'Veon Bell back there has done some damage. He's got Sammy Watkins. Wait, no. Is Watkins still Chiefs? I think he is. I'm not sure if he's hurt or not. But he's got Travis Kelce. He's got Tyreek Hill. He's got weapons around him. And then that Chiefs defense has done pretty well. I just don't see the Titans offense really breaking through. The Chiefs are built for success. Andy Reid has been at this a long time. And I think the Chiefs will win that one and then move on. I have the Chiefs in the Super Bowl on it. I have the Chiefs winning the whole thing. I just don't see anybody who can knock them off without significant injuries to the Chiefs' offense. Like, if Mahomes or Hill or Kelsey... If Mahomes gets hurt, then they won't win the Super Bowl. If Kelsey or Hill gets hurt, then it'll make it a lot harder. But I think if Mahomes stays healthy, the Chiefs will win the Super Bowl again. And I don't really think there's a solid argument saying that any other team could win. The Packers, the 1 seed on the other side, they have been great this year. They finished 13-3. And Aaron Rodgers is my favorite for MVP. Here's a crazy stat on Rodgers. Rodgers threw 48 touchdowns this year. The Packers punted 46 times. Rodgers threw more touchdowns than the Packers punted. That is an insane stat. That's crazy. And 48 touchdowns, I believe Aaron Rodgers led the league in that category, and he had a rating over 120. And then it helps that he has Davante Adams. He got upgraded to the 99 club on Madden a few weeks ago, or maybe it was just this last week. But Davante Adams has 18 receiving touchdowns. He didn't even play all 16 games. I think he missed 2. He would have had 21 touchdowns if he would have been healthy the whole year. That might have been a record. I'm not sure what the receiving touchdown record is for 1 year. But if Davante Adams would have stayed healthy the whole year, he probably would have broken that record. Davante Adams will probably get a couple of MVP votes with the way he's been playing this year. And the Packers defense, they've been solid. And then Aaron Jones at running back, he's a nice piece to their offense. And then Valdez-Scantling is another dangerous weapon for Aaron Rodgers. And Iowa State alum Alan Lazard, he's had a couple of good games. He could ball out in a playoff game if he stays healthy. I could see a Saints-Packers NFC Championship, and I think the Packers win that one just because of how dominant they've been this year. And honestly, Drew Brees' health is still a question because the dude broke pretty much every rib in his body, or pretty close to it. Like, he punctured a lung. He could have died. Drew Brees, he's a very good quarterback, but if he gets hurt before that NFC Championship game, the Saints may not even make it that far. So I've got Packers and Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and I've got the Chiefs winning it just because of Patrick Mahomes building on to what he did last year. But I think we can all agree that the biggest winner of a Packers-Chiefs Super Bowl will be State Farm. They will make the biggest Super Bowl commercial ever. And it'll have Mahomes, it'll have Rodgers, and they're going to make a ton of money off it, and the executives will be happy bathing in their piles of money. All right, I've been talking at you guys for a while. Thank you for listening. I'm going to reiterate all of these points on the Top Tier Sports podcast with my friends Ian McKinney and AJ Helmley on Wednesday. That's when we're going to be recording, and I'm not sure when it will be posted, but keep an eye on that later in the week. Thanks for listening to me talk about football. Go team. Peace out.